This TikTok prank just sent him to prison, and it's been a long time coming, but the TikToker who deliberately poisoned the produce section at Walmart and called it a prank just got thrown in prison.
A social media influencer accused of spraying bug killer on food at a Valley Walmart, then posting the video of him committing the crime online, was just sentenced to 1 year in prison.
After 6 months of court proceedings, plea deals, and a series of legal proceedings, Charles Smith, better known as Wolfie kahletti on social media, was finally sentenced this week. I think it's safe to say that covering this guy's antics from day one and watching this whole situation unfold has been like watching someone slowly dig their own grave. This is, almost by definition, watching a slow train wreck finally crash. And it's been about a year since we first started covering this guy, from the moment he went viral for tossing ice into deep fryers at fast food restaurants, to throwing cakes at people in public, and being an all-around burden to society for social media attention, which led to his inevitable arrest and now his sentencing. We've essentially just been covering it all, including the part of the story that landed him in some pretty hot water, as it was December 19, 2024, when Wolfie decided to film what would become, I guess, the most expensive prank of his career. The dude walked into Walmart in Arizona and grabbed a can of cockroach killer, or insecticide, and proceeded to spray it all over the produce section in the store. I mean, it really doesn't take a genius to realize spraying insecticides all over a produce section is way beyond any prank whatsoever. That's just disgusting behavior. And not only did he do that, he also left the area, leaving essentially it wide open for anyone to just buy without any warning for 10 whole minutes. Because hey, I guess poisoning people's food is worth a little bit of attention on social media. And obviously, he posted this video on his TikTok account, and as you can imagine, that's where everything started to fall apart for him, because who would have ever thought that filming yourself committing a felony and uploading it online would eventually backfire? Well, apparently not him, even though that we've covered the phenomenon of a social media influencer filming themselves committing a felony, then uploading it to the internet, then getting arrested probably hundreds of times at this point here on this channel. But still, he recorded himself again, going back to the store, gathering up all the contaminated items he could find, putting them into a shopping cart, and then pushing it into some random location of the store. And with that, he claims he cleaned it up. And I mean, just from covering this guy over the past year and seeing the stuff that he's done, I realized he's quite slow. But little did I know that he would actually be this stupid. The bar has just fell through the floor. It's gone. There's no possible way to lower it anymore for him. But anyway, maybe a smudge of common sense got whacked into his head when all the people started commenting, hello, FBI? So what he did then was delete those videos. And then he started defending himself by saying that because he cleaned it up, it was essentially a harmless prank. Like, dude, number one, you didn't even clean it up properly. And two, you don't get to be a hero when you created the problem. Like, this dude somehow thought that by removing items that he remembered spraying, that would completely fix the situation. But from what we know from his online behavior, he's definitely no scientist and clearly doesn't know how contamination works. Because when you spray liquid insecticide, aka a cockroach exterminator, in a small crowded area like a grocery store, it's very easy for that poison to affect more than just the intended target. For example, the shelves and the cases that were holding the produce now have poison all over them. Groundbreaking stuff, I know. And then you have the whole other danger of, kids go to Walmart. Kids touch everything. Kids rub their hands on the bins that's holding produce. That happens. I don't need to keep going on and on, but simply removing the produce like he did doesn't actually clean it up because it gets everywhere. Then obviously, he doesn't even clean it up for about 10 minutes. And 10 minutes is a very long time, meaning that there's a very, very real chance in that time that somebody ended up either buying or at least interacting with that food that had already been poisoned. And again, all of this was to simply act edgy on TikTok for some internet fame. Congratulations, you played yourself and you got banned on TikTok. But later on, court documents revealed that it was actually unknown whether he managed to collect all the contaminated items or not. So in the end, Walmart had to discard about $1,000 worth of food. And then just imagine being a Walmart worker. You're tired, you want to go home, and then you find out that some TikTok moron poisoned the produce section. So now you have to clean that up? No wonder creators get so much shit online, because the worst 1% of us gives everyone essentially a bad rep. But after the video went viral, Mesa police used it to track down and finally arrest him. Wolfie ended up turning himself in, admitting to the crime without hesitation, because as you can probably imagine, there's not really too much you can do when you yourself are the one who are proudly posting the video evidence onto social media for the entire world to see. So the Maricopa County Attorney's Office ended up indicting him on multiple charges, some of which include introducing poison, a Class 6 felony, and multiple misdemeanors like criminal damage and endangerment. After this incident, police started digging deeper into his background because, if someone is crazy enough to spray bug spray or bug killer onto food, what else would he may have done? Well, spoiler alert, they started adding more charges because they added a third-degree burglary charge related to an incident at a Bosa donut shop. However, the details surrounding this charge weren't publicly revealed as of right now, at least. All we know is that he can't step foot in any Bosa donut shops anymore, which honestly is kind of a funny selling point for Bosa donuts, because Arizona has essentially been terrorized by this guy for about 1 year now. The Bosa donut shop has essentially become the Left 4 Dead safe house before you start the mission. If you go to a Bosa donut shop, at least you'll be safe with Wolfie Kahletti. His pretrial conference was initially scheduled for April 30th, but ended up being expedited to April 3rd. Then on April 22nd, a plea agreement had been filed with all 3 cases in Maricopa County, which initially resulted in him being set to adult probation. However, just 2 days later, something happened. Wolfie officially changed from a plea deal to now pleading guilty on all charges related to Walmart and Bosa Donuts. So we finally get to June 24th, which was sentencing day, and it was pretty easy to tell how nervous Wolfie and his legal team were about the situation, because when the judge allowed him to speak, he said this:
"I'd just like to formally apologize for my actions from last year, and that I've become a better person."
Again, am I nitpicking? I don't know, but it doesn't seem like a great idea to only express regret for the actions that you're currently being held accountable for. Those who were in the courtroom expressed their frustration at him for not taking the opportunity to make a broader, more sincere apology. Because in an absolute masterclass on what not to do, there was absolutely zero acknowledgement from him on the harm of his pranks or incidents over the years. Not only that, but he didn't even bother to submit a written statement apologizing on a broader scale for everything he'd done. Although his attorney did somehow manage to pull off a little bit of damage control by saying that the client had the opportunity to reflect on what he considered to be pranks at the time, and he now understands that these are not pranks. What he did was not funny, and that's not how he should behave. Wow, it's absolutely crazy that you have to be 28 years old to finally figure that one out. Dude, your prefrontal cortex, it's been loaded in. That thing's been there for essentially the whole time you've been doing this stuff. So there is no excuse whatsoever for what you've done. He also went on record saying that not only has Wolfie taken responsibility for his actions, but he also wants to remove himself from social media once released. Wolfie himself has also claimed that social media has definitely taken over his brain, which made him do abnormal things.
Then Smith talked about why he makes these kinds of videos.
Social media has definitely took over my brain and made me do things that is abnormal.
I don't know how much I'm buying it, but clearly the dude is an attention fiend. But either way, I feel like we've been saying this for a while, but clout definitely is a drug. So after all the legal proceedings, statements, and endless back and forth that ensued, Wolfie has been finally sentenced to 1 year prison for the count of adding poison or harmful substances to food. That being said, he does get credited for the 136 days he's already served. So all in all, there's around 229 more days before he's released back into society. Maybe a little bit less if good behavior's involved. But prison time aside, Wolfie also received 3 years probation for the criminal damages, endangerment, and third-degree burglary charges that I had mentioned earlier. But it's also important to mention that those sentences run concurrently, meaning he's not serving them all at the same time. Additionally, the judge banned him from returning to Walmart and Bosa Donuts and imposed restrictions on his computer usage. I'm kind of interested in what those restrictions actually are. So he said he's not going to return to social media, but the judge might have actually made it so he can't return to social media, at least for 3 years while he's on probation. Dude's been sentenced to, if he wants to use the internet, he's forced to only use Cool Math games at his local public library.
Do not return to any Walmart. Don't return to any Bosa Donuts.
But it is worth noting that Wolfie's main TikTok account was deleted shortly after his arrest, likely due to mass reporting or just TikTok finally seeing what he did and they were like, We don't want that on the platform. Also, probably because of all the bad PR he's bringing TikTok as well. But either way, his Instagram account is still up. But hey, I guess unlike other cases where creators face essentially no punishment for their terrible actions, like Yannick, who we just discussed, like last month or something like that, this time, we at least saw some accountability here. Wolfie is finally experiencing some real consequences for his antics, which almost feels refreshing because honestly, we rarely see this now. How many stories have we covered of people doing absolute insane stuff and then nothing ever happens to them? And while a year in prison maybe doesn't sound like too much when you're potentially poisoning people with insecticides, it's still better than nothing. Now, we'll probably go a long time without talking about this guy here on the channel again, but feel free to subscribe if you're new, drop a like if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.